Seems fair to me.
Yes, it did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you very much for joining us for this, the first show of our 37th season here on Donnybrook on 9PBS. Wow. Lots to talk about, as always. First, let's meet the panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from the Big 550 KTRS, Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann with RawStory.com and the Riverfront Times, and Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. And before we get into the topics, Ray and Bill, you were here 36 years ago this week, and it was all in part because of one guy, Mike Hardgrove, the CEO and president of 9PBS KETC, saw fit to put you folks on the air with Martin Dugan and Mark Vittert and Rich Koster. And unfortunately, we lost Mike Hardgrove at the end of December at the age of 85. He was the CEO and president of 9PBS for 25 years, from 1978 until 2022. And Ray, he was a true gentleman and a great broadcaster.
A wonderful guy. And I used to ask him whether he was taking credit or blame for making us possible. But had he not been as I don't know, understanding and kind, really, in terms
supportive.
of and supportive. But I mean, he took a risk by putting us on the air, and to say we were
green,
not good, would be actually an insult to people who are actually not good. We were somewhere worse than not good. But seriously, we were, and he gave us a chance, and we'll always be grateful to him. But above all, it's just a really first-class guy.
Yeah, and he just let us go. You know, we were all newspaper guys. I mean, none of us had any experience broadcasting at all. And he understood, apparently, that it would be rough at times, and it certainly was. And the only thing he ever said of me was I had to wear a sport jacket. It was the first show. I didn't. I just wore a shirt and tie, came from work. Yeah. And he said, you got to wear a sport jacket.
Who knew you'd become a fashion plate like that?
That's right. That's right.
But Mike was just, he
was great.
Whenever we would see him, he was just, he was a really kind of a low-key guy, but just always very warm and supportive and friendly. And I know that you and I, as latecomers, appreciated that. I know you did too, Charlie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, our thoughts and prayers with the Hardgrove family. Ray, our first topic on this, the first show of the 37th season, we'll take a look at the convention center, something you guys have been talking about for a long time, like many other topics
close
here
to
in
the
St.
first
Louis.
year, yeah.
This time, Kitty Radcliffe, who is the head of the convention center, has said that there is no money for the second phase of the convention center expansion. And Ernie Trakas, a member of the St. Louis County Council, said, number one, there's going to be no money from the county for any additional funds for this second phase. Number two, he asked for the resignation of Kitty Radcliffe. Pretty strong words.
Well, I don't pay attention to anything Ernie says, but I think I did not agree with Kitty Radcliffe, and said so on the show, when she criticized Rid of Her Days and blamed whatever the overruns are on the construction project on them, because even if it apparently delayed the project 8 or 9 months, the cost could have gone down in that 8 or 9 months as much as up. So to blame them effectively for inflation was unfair. Having said that, I know this is not the sexiest project, but keeping the infrastructure of the convention center up to where we can be competitive, not with Chicago, New Orleans, or even Nashville anymore, but talk about keeping pace with Indianapolis and Kansas City and Memphis and cities in that tier, which is the lane we're in, is very important. I think it is I understand why the county folks were offended by what Kitty said, but this is no time to be messing with it. It's a solid project. It's not sexy, but you have to keep the convention center current.
They're talking about the leadership of Kitty, and I'm not a fan of Ernie Trakas, but I think he's right. I think that Kitty Radcliffe made a deal with Hazel Irby you know, that North County Rec Center, and then tried to welch on it, that thing about, well, how about our study shows a track at UMSL is what you need. That wasn't at all what the deal was. And Trakas and Rita Day Heard said that the last time Kitty Ratcliffe was there and talking about money, we were okay. And all of a sudden, it's like you hire a contractor and he gets halfway through and then says, oh,
by the way,
we had a deal, but I need a whole lot more money. I don't blame them for being upset with Kitty Ratcliffe. And I think maybe new leadership is called for there.
And I agree with that, but I don't think that you can't hold up this project by a day waiting to force her out of that job. Now, I agree. I think a change would be good. I've said this on the show, you know, but I think that this just needs to go forward and get done. It's too important to the region to get it done, and I don't think you can, for lack of a better term, like blackmail her out of the office and hold up this whole project. Because what if she stays?
So she will stay.
All right, and so if they get no money as long as you're there, that's not good.
The writing was on the wall last May when the project went out to bid, the second phase, and there were a total of 0 bidders on the project. And the one guy who really was maybe spitting into the wind because no one was listening to him, but was on the program July 8th.
Bob Clark.
Wendy, with you and Alvin on Next Up. Bob Clark, CEO of Clayco, who's got operations in 35 states, Mexico and Canada. He knows a thing or two about construction. And he was saying it was all, it was not going to come in on budget, that the thing was a terrible idea. And coincidentally, we replayed that interview last Thursday night as part of our holiday season, I guess, replay.
Yeah.
And there he was once again, saying what a terrible project this is. And Ray, you say this thing's so important for the region.
It is.
Guys, have you seen the area around the convention center? Have you seen any economic growth really around it? Have you seen the north side of it? And actually, Bob's idea for a convention center would open it up to the north side.
Yes.
So at least there'd be some sort of economic activity up there.
Look, I love Bob Clark, but I think the problem with what he wanted to do is we're not capable of doing it. It wasn't going to happen, I guess. And it's not like it was a bad idea. I don't think it was affordable. I think losing the convention business for years. I think people do underestimate the importance of found money, of money coming in from from other places, and it can't be overstated. That's all.
All right, let's move on to another topic, shall we? And I think we're going to talk about illegal gambling, Bill. We have a new Attorney General in the state of Missouri. He's Andrew Bailey. Andrew Bailey was sworn in this week and gave a speech. And he talked about this and that, and then he was asked, well, are you going to crack down on the illegal gambling machines, one-armed bandits, slot machines that are proliferating in restaurants and bars, thousands of them across the state of Missouri? And he said, no, I'm going to let the locals do that. Do you have any problems with that?
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I mean, first, Mr. Bailey talked about, his experiences in Iraq and mine going off, and he sounds like a courageous fellow, and I'm glad nobody was hurt in that incident. But it's time to take his courage and use it here. I mean, there's something about the term illegal gambling machines, illegal, that should ring a bell with the top
law enforcement
official in the state. And I know that Steve Tilley, who the Governor Parson let him hijack marijuana, and now here's Tilley running all these illegal gambling machines, and I know he's a big Republican muckety-muck, but my gosh, Andrew Bailey, show us some courage and take on Steve Tilley. Don't tell us what you did in Iraq. Do something in Missouri.
Well, it's hard for him to do that because Steve Tilley has had fundraisers
for
for him, and when Eric Schmidt returned all of the donations from whoever is in charge of Torch, is it Torch Electronics?
Torch, right.
Torch Electronics. This has just got so many overlapping between all of the casino interest, and now you have Steve Tilley lobbying for these clearly illegal, one-armed bandits. Steve Tilley is amassing an enormous amount of power, and it should make people a little uneasy.
He sure does, but the top law enforcement official should say,
oh, come
It's
on.
unconstitutional.
Come on.
Charlie, it's
Are you
unconstitutional.
going to crack down on office NCAA betting
No,
in
that's
March?
a different thing, Charlie.
different.
It's betting is what it is.
Charlie, these are machines,
Yeah.
and if they were made
Machines.
legal, then the state would get money and schools would get money. And the idea that you're going to say, the legislature's going to say, these things are illegal, until he's going to say, okay, but I'm going to have them anyway. And Andrew Bailey's going to say, not my problem.
Whatever he says.
I don't recall people saying, you know, marijuana is being sold right now before it's legalized in the state of Missouri. Have you got folks been calling on marijuana peddlers to start sending their income taxes into the state?
We've legalized that.
Yeah.
Charlie.
Not yet. It starts next month, as you know.
But even so, all right, it isn't like the Attorney General said, like, we could care, before it was legalized, it wasn't like the Attorney General, any of them, ever said, like, we could care less
Sell
if
it.
the police arrest
Right.
somebody in your jurisdiction, okay? Now, this is so Huey Longish.
Yeah.
We
No,
had
it
in
really
the
is.
30s.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you think?
really is.
You think the Attorney General is going to send lawyers who are out of the Mizzou Journalism School into Clinton County searching bars and restaurants for illegal slot machines?
what you
You
know,
don't
It's
have
done
to
by the
search
sheriff
every
or the
bar, Charlie.
police.
They're-
It's a local issue.
Oh, come
Oh
on.
my God,
Charlie.
it's a
He's
state
he's
issue.
supposed to be a law enforcement official,
Yeah.
and he's taking
top.
money
Okay.
from Steve Tilley,
Well,
and then saying,
where-
I'm not even going to
Where, where is your outrage with all this lost revenue, with all these expired plates that are never enforced? People are driving around without license plates.
We're with you on
We're
that, Charlie.
not happy about
This is
that.
one issue at a time. Also, I find this interesting that on this issue, it's up to your local municipality to take care of it. Well, our local municipality wants to try to get some of these guns off the street, okay? But, oh, no, the state won't have that. So it's picking and choosing which laws you want to enforce. By the way, you would also, not to prolong things, but you would also basically just say, like, look, you aren't trying to get everyone, every week, 10 people get popped. And after about 4 weeks, the bars themselves will say, like, we
There
got
are
it.
so many
Okay, great.
things.
First of all, let me,
I got a point because we got to move on.
Well, first of all, I'm personally offended at your cheap shot at people that might have had expired tags, because I did. However, they're current now. But the no, but the what it shows to me, and I obviously agree with the general assessment here, but it shows just how discretionary the role of the Attorney General has been and continues to be, and that is a bigger problem generally. That the Attorney General is going to enforce what he does and what he doesn't.
The people out there don't give a you-know-what about illegal gambling machines.
That's not true.
Of all the issues out there,
They
my
should.
goodness, we had 120 kids killed or shot in St.
But
Louis
Charlie, you can say
last
that to
year.
any problem whatsoever.
That's where the outrage should be. A one-armed bandit in some guy's bar.
Okay.
Come on.
There are-
Wendy Wiese, how about homeless sleeping underneath viaducts or underpasses? Since the first of the year, it's been illegal in Missouri to sleep on state property. Of course, this is a law directed toward the homeless. What do you think? A good law?
It's a Class C misdemeanor. So to me, the homeless problem, I think, and to a lot of people, it's almost like, remember being a kid and holding mercury in your hand? It's such a complex problem. They move constantly. So many of them are dealing with mental health crises, ongoing mental health crises. I don't see what this accomplishes. I don't see what charging them with misdemeanors and requiring people who have nothing, no addresses, to show up for a court. I don't get that.
I agree with Wendy, and excuse me, but these are human beings, and they are, in a large percentage of the case, have needs that are not being addressed, ironically, by the same system that now is so intent on vilifying them and kicking them off state property. And I just think it's a very a complete lack of compassion and a lack of self-awareness on the part of the state that we're going to make this. I just don't
don't know
like
that
it.
I'd be
I
that
don't-
critical. I think that
Who's going to arrest them? The state patrol? Because like the municipality, they're going to be too busy chasing down
And do
gambling
what with them?
machines.
That's right.
It's the locals. In the law, it says that the locals have to enforce it, otherwise they face consequences. I happen to actually be in favor of the law. And the first time you get a warning, second time you get a citation unless you move. So it's kind of, you're
Charlie,
given
But
time.
you're
I don't
still-
even
you're
know why
still
you bring
pushing
this
it.
up. 120 children were killed, and this is what you want to talk about?
I agree.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not losing sleep over it, but I think that this area,
Does anybody not?
These aren't people.
How
these aren't
about the
people who
state
are-
government that we're talking about, the state of Missouri, stepping up and addressing the fact that we don't have services, we don't have outreach
the
for these
mayor
people?
has $500
Yeah.
million from the feds.
Excuse me, the state
$200
of
million
Missouri.
billion
from
dollars
Stan
windfall.
Crow.
We have mental health is one of the functions of the state, and we completely let it down and act like, oh yeah, let's just, the answer is let's put these people in jail and bring them to court.
Yeah, these
ridiculous.
people aren't going to job interviews and taking their kids to school. These are homeless.
Do you think the
people.
state should be involved in treatment of mental health or not?
Well, of course it is. When you pay your personal property tax, that money goes to that mental health fund.
I haven't looked it up, but I'll bet you when you look it up, the Missouri will be in its 40-some spot.
We could always do better.
Well, but that's what we ought to be focusing on, their needs. No, let's be focusing on their needs.
They're going to be driven off, and then they're going to come back. We're adding pain and misery to people.
To a shelter, as you know.
And can I add this? This is not the worst law the state of Missouri has ever passed. Okay, I think that I am not as fired up about it. I think it's kind of silly and kind of sad, but at the same time, okay, state.
I'm not fired up about Alvin's right, but I'm not fired up about
the state property. You can go to 99% of the rest of the property area, which is not state property. How many pieces of state property are there?
Well,
actually?
Charlie, would you rather have the people under a viaduct or on your lawn? And I mean that seriously. I mean, when we say you can't be on state property, then it's like California, where they move on to personal property.
Well, I think it's a good question. And why don't we take that money that's going to the convention center and build housing for the homeless?
Because not every program can be crossed over to something unrelated to what it's designed for. We have a hotel tax that we collect to support the convention center, okay? That doesn't get applied to the police department. It doesn't get applied to everything else. And you
by
should know
design.
that.
By design.
Well, because it can. It's earmarked for a specific
that's
purpose.
We've balkanized all these taxes. The sales tax is made up of a tax for the zoo, for the bike trails.
But you can't, they don't all go into one pile. That's
exactly.
Well, they shouldn't. But the bottom line, to Alvin's point, I'm not worked up about the law as much as I'm worked up about the fact that we don't address the core problem here.
But we have the money.
Yes, we do. The state of Missouri doesn't do it.
The locals have the money, like never before.
No.
I think
the Cronky
you're
cash
right.
is $500 million.
It's a state function.
You are right. That if you earmarked, I don't know how much, 10 million, said we're going to build a facility for the homeless. Oh, by the way, there was one, but y'all didn't want Larry Rice down there. Right. He was a pariah, so, be careful what you wish for.
What did you make of this latest case involving St. Louis Alderman Brandon Bosley? Brandon Bosley, about a week or so ago, was in the news because he released a 9.5-minute videotape on his Facebook, and it showed him confronting a woman who was in the street, and he'd accused the woman of attacking him, trying to carjack him. And with a lot of profanity, he described this woman in terms you can't share on this program. And he then went to the police. The police arrested the woman that Bosley said had tried to carjack him, the alderman, and they put her in jail for 7 nights. The circuit attorney released this woman after 7 nights, saying, look, we're not commenting too much, but it looks as though there are some problems with the alderman's testimony to the police.
Okay, well, if it was false testimony, then they need to proceed with that and see if he broke a law. I think one reason that she was probably taken into custody was so you can't just force people to have like a mental health exam. So whatever happened, this might have been, maybe the circuit attorney's office saying like, all right, here's a chance for us to get her checked out just to make that she's, kind of all there. But what happened, I don't know. So it isn't like I'm going to sit here and say like, yeah, I think it went down just like the alderman said. No, I'm not quite on that train yet. But like I said last week, once again, pulling a gun on somebody and whatever, if you feel threatened, I mean, he could have hit her with the gun. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying if something like that did happen in this state, you're probably well within your rights.
Well, yeah, the thing that I found alarming was the language that Brandon Bosley used when he was talking. I mean, I saw a transcript of an interview he had with one of the TV stations, and the language was just outrageous. And I thought, this is the guy who's going to be the alderman for downtown and for the new NSGA. And I thought, gosh, I mean, I'm not too
Prudish.
True.
Right.
Thank you, Wendy, for helping.
Sorry.
No, I really mean that. Thank you. That's twice you had to do that.
It's a two-way street.
I'm not prudish about it, but I thought, gosh, I mean, you gotta be a little better than this, Mr. Bosley.
The cursing, sometimes people go on cursing tirades, so I don't hold that against them. However, the whole situation is one where, like, what's up,
It's just
man?
crazy.
Well, and he's in a three-way race. He's with, is it James Page and Rasheen Aldridge? Are
I
those
think
the
so,
people
yeah.
he's running against? This is, well, we'll have to see in today's environment, but I can't imagine this does. I thought Rasheen, they were very kind of classy in how they reacted to it, but I think James Page and Rasheen Aldridge just had their chances
Maybe
helped
so,
a little.
but
you
did
never
he
know. I
do
don't know.
anything different than the McCloskeys? I mean, brandished a firearm in front of people?
I don't think that
And
we're at a point where
McCloskeys
we
weren't
can
an
liken what he
elected
did.
officials.
If he wasn't an alderman, would this woman be in jail?
I think we cannot liken this to menacing a couple hundred people
And yes,
by
Charlie, I
pointing
think-
firearms at them for walking peacefully behind your.
Did you
behind
see
your
the
house.
woman? She's lying on her back in the middle of the street. She didn't look too menacing to me.
Okay,
That'll
well,
be the
I'm not,
laugh,
but this
you're
is
right.
unrelated.
But Charlie, I do think she would have. I think she would have gone to jail just so they could see what was.
Figure it out.
But
Figure it out.
so
I don't
you're
think
going to
that-
have two different ways of looking at the alderman. Either he is somebody who is deeply committed to his area, to his ward. He is passionate about improving the life of, he just frustrated in the moment? It sounded like it to me. But on the other hand, this is just really.
Well, why did he post the video?
That's
I
what
know.
That's
But that's the
Well,
world.
that's what I'm
Why?
saying. It gets
That's
into
the world
Let me
we
ask
live
you
in
this.
today.
Why did Tony Patrico of The Point put in writing his advances to these women? As you know, Tony Patrico of The Point morning host is no longer with the station after he sent inappropriate texts to female listeners, asking them to, share photos of themselves without their clothes on, that sort of thing.
Yeah, just garden variety stuff.
Well, it's actually what he apparently and his co-host did on the air. They had something called Fake or Real, and women were encouraged to send photos of their bus lines, and that's what they did on the air. And then off the air, he was asking these women to send him photos. Well, he's no longer with the station.
Correct. Wasn't this his personal social media account? So that's the lesson that we apparently, those of us in the media, the brain trust of the media, we can't figure that out. If you post something on Facebook that is considered lewd and lascivious by your station management and its sales team and clients, you're going to lose your job. It's that simple.
Okay,
it's
well,
math.
I had never heard of the show, and when I read about it, and I read what Charlie was saying, that pictures of bus lines, and then it was sexually explicit personal ads, and I thought, okay, if this is their show, if that's what they do, why would they be upset that he's propositioning women? And it wasn't like they said, well, he was stalking women, or when they said no, he got upset. He would just say, okay, I was just kidding anyway. I mean, I thought, that sounds like what the show is. So,
But this is his personal Facebook account. So he has been caught in the act of personally off the air trying to use for his own personal self-aggrandizement and advancement in what areas we don't want to know, personal lewd pictures.
I speak as someone who doesn't have a personal Facebook account.
Right.
But I mean, it just seems to me like this is what they do.
Right, but that's what you do. Ha ha! It's a joke. It's during the show, and that I don't understand either. But this is his personal Facebook account, and if there is ever, if you're station management and you're aware of what he's doing on his personal Facebook account, and somebody comes forward and says he did this to me or he did that to me, then in my mind you're complicit.
Well, and I would say, I would use your own phrase. I agree with Wendy. This is what they do, describes his show, and this is what they do, which is to fire you if you're the station manager, and that's pretty much it. I mean, and you can't really, I suppose you can't blame either party because this is what they do.
I see both sides. Now, one, Nick Saban the most God-fearing football coaches in the world, if they spoke to the mailman the way they speak on the sideline during a game, it would be a problem. Okay.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
like, wait a minute, hold it. All right, when you're on the job, okay, but when you're not. So I get that, but I'm kind of with Bill. I mean,
Thank
like,
you,
know,
Alvin.
we have a lewd and lascivious show, and you acted lewd and lasciviously, and now you're fired.
Hey,
The problem
it's
might
not
have
like
been-
it was a religious program.
If he was giving away something of value in a contest in exchange
Exchange
for
for-
nude photos, then he might have an FCC
Well, yeah.
program.
Well,
problem,
yeah, okay.
and the station
All
might
right.
be
And the
especially
station might
good.
have
I
a
like that
bigger
guy.
one.
This is what they do.
It's possible, yeah. Okay, let's get to the old mailbag, shall we? My husband and I have been talking about moving out of Illinois because of the high taxes and political corruption for a couple of decades. Once all of our parents have passed, we're leaving. That from Gail Malter of Illinois. Rather than give money to panhandlers, I've always had a supply of $10 Subway gift cards. The recipients can get a nutritious sandwich, chips, and soft drink. I've been doing this for years, and I always get a positive response. That from Fred Miller of St. Louis. Thank you, Fred. Blaine Word wrote, periodically, I make an effort to view the show and almost always feel frustrated, primarily because the panelists talking over each other. For crying out loud, get a talk stick and pass it around the table on a 1-minute timer. Thank you, Blaine Word. You can write us, care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Send us those letters, not pictures, to Donnybrook at 9pbs.org and use the hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Call the 9 line at 314-512-9094 and listen to us on your favorite podcast source, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. That completes the first half, but stay tuned because Bill and Ray will be talking to former Congressman John Shimkus about what's going on or not going on Capitol Hill this week. That's next on Next Up. Thank you very much.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.